Dear viewers, the metro is going to be here in a while. Nobody knows in how much time. But is that the kind of the metro rail that we want in Bangalore? And what is it going to be to begin with? To speak about that, have with me today somebody who has been observing, watching and waiting all about metro. I have to welcome V. Ravichandar. You are the former member of the erstwhile BATF.
Yes.
You've been watching Metro Rail project quite closely, and perhaps you are one person who really wanted to get involved in this if you were given a chance, right?
True.
I'm quite disappointed now.
Very disappointed. In fact, if there's one thing that depresses me most in Bangalore, it is the site of the metro construction and that edifice that is coming up. It is
grotesque monstrosity.
Yeah, you could even use stronger words than that. But fundamentally, aesthetically, in terms of the future, the way it's coming up overground. In fact, I've always held the view that we needed to bury the metro.
Okay.
Take it underground.
Okay.
That is what we should have done.
But they were intelligent people, thinkers, visionaries, and people who could really plan well. In spite of all that, why do we have a metro like this, which is like going to be crawling all over the city instead of under it?
Right. So you have to go back to the beginning. At the start, you really need somebody who has a vision and is willing to take a call for the future.
Okay.
Now, people will tell you that if you take the metro underground, it costs more money.
Okay, some 4,000 crores.
Yeah, so a 6,000 crore project becomes a 10,000 crore project, so there's 4,000 crores.
Okay.
But it is not expensive because this 4,000 crores is to be paid back over 40 years.
Okay.
So on the state budget, the impact per year will be about 150 crores.
Okay.
Which is nothing.
With interest too.
Yeah, with interest, and you get low long-term interest in these kind of for these kind of projects.
Okay.
But just imagine, by doing that, future generations would have the overground available
Still
to them.
available for a lot of other things.
Whether you want to do a bus rapid transport at another
and whoever
stage.
knows that what kind of transport you'll be having
Exactly.
in the future, in about 40 years from now.
Exactly, and in fact, today's paper, for instance, says that they are thinking of doing underground parking in the brigade grounds. I found that ironical. So you want to think about parking underground, and when you have the chance to do the metro underground, that you take overground.
That will be a larger space actually to make an
the footprints are much larger,
Yeah.
and therefore it's a wrong call made at a point of time.
But who made that wrong call?
See, that's the beauty of our system.
Okay.
When something goes well, there are enough people to take credit.
Okay.
When something goes wrong, no one's very clear how did this decision get taken.
But this decision was made in a hurry, right? Because
Yes.
everybody started talking about Bangalore needing metro rail, and suddenly there was this decision to bring metro rail, and there was a lot of dilemma about whether it was going to be metro or mono and all that, and ultimately it was settled down to this.
In fact, you can almost say that while we might be thinking about what to do for bus transport or some transport network within the city, suddenly from nowhere, the metro lands and says that this is the 34-kilometer metro and this is the alignment.
Okay.
The ordinary citizen thinks there is some wisdom behind the entire thinking. But the reality is, often when you look closely, that wisdom often doesn't exist.
Okay.
So as a result, we are saddled with decisions that cannot be wiped away. I mean, this is now going to be part of Bangalore's life for the rest of
Okay, but when a decision like this is made, I mean, isn't there a process behind it? Because when public money is involved, you were involved in a lot of policy-making initiatives. But when something like this just happens and, people start building it and the construction is all over the city, I mean, who is to question? Because, we all talk about things only when when they are underway or when things are over.
Right.
Not before that at all. People are presented with even a CDP, but why people are not given this idea of what metro would look like? To be very frank about it, I think even newspapers published about the artist's imagination of how metro would look on MG Road. But didn't people know that, I mean, metro would not come with a swish of a wand, but certainly a lot of construction would happen and there will be a lot of ugliness all around.
See, the question here is, citizen participation is a nice mantra. People voice it. But in reality, was there any kind of a consultative process or even a process? In fact, I personally believe that you should have put a matter out to vote saying that, look, there is going to be an impact of 150 crores per year more for the next 30, 40 years if we take it underground. And can we have a vote just on that subject? Taking it underground versus overground. Nobody bothers.
But why did it become such a big issue when the Chief Minister himself recently spoke about spending about 3,000 crores on Bangalore, but why not 4,000 crores extra on metro for 40 years? If you can really help the city look better, function better, and also you get thanks in the end because you had a better vision.
You need people with vision. Now, for example, if Hyder Ali, if we go back to history, if his accountant came and told him that, look, that mango orchard that you're looking, it is difficult to fit it because it's too expensive and we cannot do it, etc.
And expansive.
Expansive, and we can basically use that elsewhere.
Yeah, we could rather build a palace there.
Or some other thing, or some other option that had come.
Hamlet close by or some kind of...
So he took a call that I want that orchard and I want that expansive orchard. Subsequent generations are benefiting from it.
Because nobody wants their name to live beyond them, right? Because they want to live as soon as possible, finish things off and disappear. Because nobody thinks of the next generation, people after a few centuries, what they would talk, what they would analyze about these people's decisions and all that, right?
Internationally, there is a fantastic example of some set of people, and let me just spend a minute on that. You take the Egyptians. If you go to Egypt today, the pyramids, we know how the people lived after their death. They lived in these pyramids. How the Egyptians lived centuries ago, there is no sign of it. But by doing those pyramids, what did the Egyptian pharaohs achieve? They achieved two things. It was the original food for work program of those days. And second, today, almost about 40% of the GDP of Egypt comes from tourist revenue of those pyramids. So you talk about future-proofing, you cannot better the Egyptian model.
People only talk about doing things for the future and nobody actually thinks about the future.
You see, there is no incentive. People know that in elections you tend to get voted out with the next election. So why would I do something as a politician which my successor will come and get the benefit for something that I did? So foresight is lacking as a rule in our current system.
It's not just about the planning of this Bangalore Metro Rail, but also the way it's being constructed, which is absolutely unscientific, and it looks quite unhygienic also.
It's very shabby. The first thing that comes to mind is this is shabby.
And they put barricades once and remove it, and I mean, the roads are dug up everywhere and they are once again resurfaced.
I mean, what is happening? And you compare vis-a-vis Delhi Metro. The Delhi Metro work is going on to a greater extent than what's happening in Bangalore. But wherever you go where the construction sites are there in Delhi, it gives you the look of a professional piece of work.
Even the quality of the pillars and the kind of substances they're using and the materials too are not very encouraging at all, because nobody knows, because we really don't know what is going to be the state of these things after even about 15 years.
So I don't want to comment when I don't know enough on that, but when I see the shabby nature of construction work,
the kind of people there, people not even wearing uniform, not even helmets, it doesn't look like a world-class project.
You fear the worst. You just take the pillars of the metro, compare it with the pillars of the elevated expressway on Hosur Road. The pillars of the elevated expressway look significantly better. And I mean, you can come up with loads. At the end of the day, the aesthetics of the pillars of the expressway.
And it's on MG Road. MG Road is like the showcase of Bangalore.
Exactly.
And on that road, if you have such ugliness, which is manifesting itself in the name of Metro Rail, you can imagine how the rail service itself could be.
Exactly. And I'll tell you one more thing. If you remember, earlier there were designs of 4 designs of railway stations, how it would look, and local architects had done it. The latest news one is hearing is those plans have been shelved, saying too expensive, cannot do it. And we are going to be back with some semi-PWD kind of structures. So I don't know.
So I don't think that this is going to be a very attractive mode of transport for a lot of people. People travel in Delhi Metro only even for the experience in some cases. But here people may just avoid it for the sheer, dread of the experience. Because, if you really want to take people off the roads and get them into the metro rail, you need to make it attractive.
Exactly. So here you have hit the nail. Basically, the metro finally is a transport solution for people to go from place A to B in the fastest possible manner and in a safe and good environment.
And think of it as a viable alternative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, for that, you have to actually pedal your ways to make it attractive.
Yeah.
We don't seem to be going down that route. Second, the metro is not a pure play engineering issue of construction, etc. The metro is about thinking holistically. Where will the person come? Let's say he's using a two-wheeler. Where will the person park? How will he shift from that mode of transport into the metro mode of transport? Or how will he shift from the bus into this? It is an integrated view that is required, such that I might initially take buses from my house, but I know where I can reach the metro station, from where I can continue in the metro network.
But the connecting routes are horribly not planned.
Exactly. It is not planned. And tomorrow, they will then tell you...
It's going to be the same state once again. The BMTC buses parking anywhere that they want to, stopping anywhere that they would feel like or wish or whatever. And ultimately, there's going to be more chaos than what is there today.
You take the Taj Residency Hotel. I mean, at the end of the day, your metro is going to take a turn out there and start going. Now, the buses that have to carry people to a metro station, they will say, oh, sorry, the pillar is coming in the way. We may not be able to run the bus out here. I don't know. If you really think about it long and hard, unless you take the holistic, if you had looked at the holistic view of this thing, you would have gone underground in the first place.
Okay. Not just about underground. I think we could have waited for a few more years and planned it better. Because, you have parallelly more other things happening. There are more buses coming in. People are buying more cars and the roads are the same. And nobody seems to be having any idea of what things are going to be in the future. Would it just end up as a big waste of money?
It could well end up as being a reasonably white elephant kind of thing. See, the metros the world over tend to make losses. I mean, except the London, New York and Paris metros, which are very mature, over 50, 60 years, they don't tend to make money. That is given. But you need to encourage enough ridership out there so that they're at least successful in the context of what you wanted to do.
And the kind of people you really want to bring from the road to the metro are the people who are driving cars and who are having two-wheelers and other modes of transport. And if at all you make it another municipality facility, how would these people even think of? Because, there's this mindset that if you travel in a road car, you're actually talking and, showing off your own prosperity. And if you want to travel in a metro too, I mean, you have to somewhere justify that you have transported yourself from a own traveling facility, but also to a better, convenient, logically viable
See, the future lies in making public transport sexy, if I can call it that on TV. The reality is, as you rightly said, people have to leave their personal vehicles at home and use public transport. And weekend, maybe you take the car out. Now, are the signs on the ground that we are planning in a manner that people will do this? The answer seems to be no. To your question regarding was the metro necessary? Honestly, there are enough people who believe that a well-designed bus transport system would have worked better than what we are trying to attempt right now.
But looking today at the way it's being built, anybody can be quite confident that it's going to be not a very clean facility, because even the very area where they are building, it's so uncouth.
See, nothing about the way the metro is being done right now.
There's this report about child labor being used, and it is just that they just don't care about how it's being built. Ultimately, the project needs to be completed by time. That is all it is.
And even not on time. In fact, I get the sense that by now there are parts of the MG Road stretch where the barricade should have been removed by now. So I have my doubts whether about the on-time bit, and clearly the way it's going about and everything that has led to the way the metro is today, it does not inspire confidence of how it will work out once it comes up.
No, after the Richmond Circle fiasco, that with the flyover, we still are thinking about how metro would be viable. Don't you think there's something fundamentally wrong with us? And even taking into consideration the fact that we had something like the BATF, I'm sure that you did a lot of planning, and I'm sure that you looked at all these options like metro, mono and everything. It's not that we don't have enough intelligence to facilitate a better thinking. You need not always wait for the politicians to make the decisions. What kind of, because the people like you, I'm sure that you know the solution. You could have thought of better things, but you speak to only a select few, and the majority of people who can actually help make that decision don't even come to know about it. They always have the assumption that maybe the best decision has been made on their behalf.
Now, for the record, the BATF was not involved in the metro decision.
No, at least you're thinking of
I just want
alternative.
to come to that. Neither about the metro decision or its alignment or the overground, underground, the BATF was not involved at all.
Okay.
In fact, you say about planning, to us it was quite clear that a direction-oriented bus system was the way to go ahead to fix the city. So during the time that we were applying our mind to it, we were clear that we will need multimodal, maybe some element of elevated rail transit, mono or metro, etc., as part of the integrated solution. But I would never have dreamt that we would take a decision and start implementing a shift to a metro without giving it complete thought on how all the pieces of the transportation
because it really
fits.
looks like a standalone independent project which is like totally oblivious of everything that's happening around it.
Everything is about engineering.
No, it's like, today you have new Volvo buses and so many other things are happening on the sidelines.
Exactly.
And you have this big monster project that's happening in the middle of the city. And nothing is being integrated. And you have no chance of things happening because, you cannot really start planning those things later on.
In fact, my biggest regret really is that maybe we should have gone and built more magic. I don't approve of magic boxes. But if you had gone and done more magic boxes on MG Road, maybe you couldn't have taken the metro overground, you would have stopped that decision. So you really, everything is in silos. This happens as somebody is doing it, that's their responsibility. The BMTC is someone else's call. So this whole integration.
And today, the biggest, the damage has been for the greenery of Bangalore, right? The biggest casualty, rather.
I mentioned depression. I mean, it is. I mean, Lakshman Rao Boulevard in the Jayanagar stretch.
Yeah, imagine.
Lal Bagh. I think
these are
it is
assets
criminal.
of Bangalore.
These are assets. I mean, if you can't build assets for the future, don't eat into the
how
assets.
is it possible that somebody can even think of it?
You have to ask.
I mean,
the
you can build anything, but can you really grow trees that have grown for so many? They're not even thinking of replanting those trees.
They're talking of replanting those trees.
But that won't happen. That won't happen.
The
They would rather pull this and put it somewhere.
The issue is not that. The issue is when you have a showpiece like the Lal Bagh, when you have a showpiece like the Lakshman Rao Boulevard, by tearing
actually,
it down,
Bangalore doesn't have anything to show. Exactly. You have just 1 or 2 or 3, maximum 4 buildings.
So when you have that and you go and execute a decision like this, what is the message you're sending out? That none of those things matter.
Why didn't even the courts interfere? There are people who are going and fighting for environment issues even with private parties, but when something like this is happening...
See, the law allows them to do what they're doing. Let's face it. The law allows them to do it. So if you go for a legal interpretation, the law will allow it. That's not the issue. The powers that be, whether it be the political leadership or the administrative bureaucracy, they need to do the right thing, not only by current citizens, they need to do the right thing by future generations.
Okay, if you have to compare this metro with the Delhi metro, I mean, what exactly are...
See, Delhi has some advantages, which is really they have a lot more land tracts. The state owns a lot of the land, and consequently they have the luxury of space at one level. Where they did not have the luxury of space, Chandni Chowk, etc., they went underground out there because that was the only way they could have done that. But the key learning, for example, in the Delhi metro, they took the most difficult stretches and implemented the Delhi metro in the most difficult areas first. And once the most difficult areas was made, the rest, today you have a situation where Noida is saying bring the metro here, Gurgaon is saying bring the metro here. So by doing the most difficult tract and showcasing that this is what it is about, the rest of the places automatically say I want the metro to come here. We don't seem to have taken that tack in the first place.
Viability means connectivity and integration, right? In this
viability is integration. Obviously you're going to lose money on the metro. But connectivity, which means
Okay.
multimodal.
Okay.
Whether you come by a two-wheeler or you come by an auto. Or come by
Nobody
this-
knows exactly as to where they are going to get into this metro rail, right? Because nobody actually
Somebody is-
even has an imagination as to whether you have to just, climb onto the
Hey,
trees
some
and drop
successor-
into a metro rail.
Some successor of Praveen Sood will have to apply his mind on the ground in real time. See, you take other paths.
No, but even then, if you have to get into a metro rail, the metro rail
Right.
in Jayanagar, I mean, you cannot possibly imagine a parking area or a metro station that can really accommodate the kind of people that you expect to get into the rail.
Exactly.
That only means so much, so many more vehicles,
Right.
so many more people, so many more facilities.
counterproductive.
And it's just not possible. It's going to be a disease, a cancer.
It is possible, but it requires you to think differently.
And that only means that you have to cut down more trees and,
The trees will suffer definitely, but I'll tell you one thing. Unless you think differently about the adjoining area, about a metro station, you have to change your land laws where you can aggregate property and land. You'll have to think of going high-rise in those places and get some floor area there so that it becomes viable. You have to think about densification of the metro route so that people along the metro route, there is a higher density so that there is a higher usage. All is not lost, notwithstanding the mistakes that we have made.
Okay.
I'm
But who
quite
would listen?
optimistic. I'm quite optimistic that in future, the people will find solutions which will have elements of densification, which will have elements of
They're
going
going to be
high-rise.
more cosmetic or artificial ones, right? Because, something once again, somebody will suddenly decide, okay, you cannot get into the metro rail, do something else.
No, but
That's
for
all
example-
it is. It's all about somebody's selfish or,
No, but then, no. So for
Election
example,
interest in
no,
mind.
but instance, you want to solve, let's say, a good metro station at Plaza Cinema, which is where the MG Road is coming.
Okay.
If you view a larger tract as the catchment area, which has elements of parking, elements of the station, and view that as a 40-floor building at the end of the day,
Okay.
you will then make that particular thing viable. The point I'm trying to make is, if you want to fix a problem which has elements of where will you park, where will the bus come, how will this be commercially viable, solutions exist.
Okay.
But somebody has to take charge and say, yes, I am going ahead and taking these kind of decisions because this is what is required to make this whole project viable.
Okay, but this is not just about viability in terms of being an alternative mode of transport. It's also about whether it's going to be commercially viable, because unless it's commercially viable, because when you're waiting at the station, you need some shops there, you need some other facilities and all that. And the most important, who are the people who will be using metro ultimately? I think there's a confusion about that itself, because once you're talking about people who are traveling by buses, if you think of taking people off the buses and then putting them into metro rail, then that itself is such a preposterous idea,
No,
because
each will see
then
it. I
you
don't
would
think
be
they're planning that as such. I
no,
don't
but
think.
that would be happening, because ultimately the people who will be using metros are the people who are quite comfortable in a public transport already,
Right.
because it's been extremely difficult to take these people off the cars and even put them into Volvo buses.
Right.
Right. So you know about it.
yeah, I know.
So when that has not happened till date, with all the kind of attractions that you offer to them, what kind of a municipality metro can be interesting
So
to
the
anyone?
point really is like this. I'm still not losing hope that we will get around to thinking, how do people move from place A to B to C to D using public transport? My dream outlook is that 70% of trips made by people in Bangalore should be in public transport. Now, whether it's bus, part mono, part rail are matters of what works for that.
For that, we also need a government policy about this car usage, right? Because, I mean, it's easier today with the nano car coming in. Most people are actually thinking of buying cars, whether it's a 1 lakh car or a 20 lakh car or a 1.5 crore car. It's not at all about metro in their minds. Today, people are just watching metro happening all around them, but nobody is actually thinking, maybe they'll just use it once to see that how the experience would be. Perhaps to reject it thereafter.
No, the thing there is now, on cars, etc. Over a period of time, we'll have to move to congestion charges. So if a car comes into certain designated city central areas, they'll have to pay a
That
charge
will
for
just add to the coffers of the city.
it. Yeah, but you can't help it. You see, you can't have it both ways.
Okay.
I am for people buying nanos. It's an aspirational thing.
Okay.
I'm not saying ban the nano.
Okay.
Because there will be people who will have aspirations, and just because some of us have already met those aspirations, we can't tell the others what is good for them.
Okay.
I am a great believer that you have tiered pricing. During peak hours, you want to park your car, you have to pay peak rates.
Okay.
During off-peak hours, you pay almost next to nothing.
Okay.
You want
So
to come
people
into
need
some
to make
areas.
their decisions.
Pardon?
People need to make
Yeah,
their decisions.
but for that, the key thing is the system needs to give you
An
choices
alternative.
that work,
yes.
which means I must have a bus system that is good and works with punctuality. I must have a metro system that works. I must have a system where the buses feed into the metro network and the metro feeds into the bus network. If I have that as an optional choice, then you can say, now I have got choice for you, please pay for this.
But actually people in Bangalore otherwise are very adjusting in nature. They can actually, what do you say,
They are just
accommodate
ready.
themselves in any kind of circumstance. So the government should not have any kind of problem at all if it really thinks of a good and viable and
See, if you give
acceptable
viable,
and-
acceptable alternative,
Yeah.
and under that alternative you say, but if you still choose to take out your car, if you still choose to do this, it comes at a price tag.
Okay.
I think it's possible to sell it to the public.
so everything is not lost yet.
Yeah. I am reasonably optimistic, but things don't get better till they get really worse. That is
Okay.
India. That is Bangalore.
Okay.
So things
and
have
they
to
may
really
actually spend all those 4,000 crores
to worsen a situation,
and
which then has to get fixed.
actually invest more money and then start correcting it
Exactly.
instead
So-
of actually having thought of it in the first
Yeah,
place.
we
itself.
don't necessarily get it right at the outset, but we finally get there.
That only means there's something fundamentally wrong with this.
Obviously, it is fundamentally wrong at one level, but it's a model that's worked well for us over centuries.
Okay.
So we are just specks in this time universe, and so we will do our little bit in messing it up. We'll do a little bit in fixing parts of it, and we'll leave it to successive generations.
I think we're all responsible in a way.
We are. I think the citizens are as responsible as government as much as
For
politics.
asking these questions too late in the day.
Not only asking, I think our behavior on the road, since we are on this issue of transport and thing, the way we drive, the way we cross roads,
We deserve this.
in a sense, it's the pot calling the kettle black. I think there are two sides to this whole thing, and both sides are to blame. So it cannot be that I can sit on a high pedestal and say, you government are the problem. I think I and we the people are also part of the problem.
Only by hoping for the best we need to end this show.
We have to, because it is optimism that keeps us going. Because if we give in to the voices of cynicism, skepticism and pessimism, then we then have to go and seek cure for depression, all of us.
Thank you, Ravichandar, for having come to this show.